Good morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Our focus this morning is on Milwaukee County. My first guest was elected for a second four-year term in the April 5th spring election. He received 55% of the vote to defeat challenger State Senator Chris Larson. And it is a pleasure to welcome back to Our Issues Milwaukee, Milwaukee County Executive Chris Abele. How are you?
I'm great. Good to be back.
It's good to have you back. Now, the last time you were here, as I just said, you were campaigning, and you have another 4 years ahead now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And this is a great time to actually discuss some of the issues and your goals. So you say that easing racial disparities is at the top of your agenda this time around. Talk about that.
It is. You know, as most of your viewers know, Milwaukee has some really unfortunate distinctions as having some of the highest racial disparities in terms of graduation rates, employment rates, crime, incarceration. And as many people who've lived here for more than a few decades know, none of these things are new. We don't get to say that this is a surprise or, you know, we're shocked by it. This has been the case for a long time. And I think the reason that those conditions have persisted, that we haven't done more about it, is there hasn't been a sort of a collective sense of urgency around it. You know, when you run a business and you have one concern or one department where, you know, you've got a building on fire, you drop everything else and you give it the urgency it deserves.
That's right.
In government, our first responsibility is to make sure that we're serving not just some of the population, all of it. And we have an area of the population, the African American community, where we are very clearly not doing enough. And, you know, our job in public office is to see that kind of concern, call it out, and act with the appropriate urgency. So my highest priority right now is to do everything we can at the county to make a difference, and not just talk about it, to measure, to set goals, to hold ourselves accountable to them. And, you know, that's something that I'm hoping to also encourage other leaders, not just political leaders, but in the nonprofit community, the foundation community, the business community, the faith community. I mean, this isn't just a county problem. This is an all of us problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it needs an all of us solution.
Yes, and with just some of the things that you stated, statistics show that the African American poverty rate is at 38%, which is one of the worst in the country, and 67% of children in the 53206 zip code are living in poverty. With that said, you actually planned your inauguration in the 53206 zip code at Moody Park. Was there any significant reason behind that?
There was, actually. You know, when after the election we were talking about where to do the inauguration. I mean, typically it's in the courthouse. And I just thought, no, I don't want to do it in the courthouse. I don't want to do it in sort of a formal building. I want to do it in a zip code that is as much the heart of the city as downtown or any other part of it. I wanted to do it in 53206 specifically because that is the area, that is the zip code that holds, I mean, nationally, some of the worst statistical, you know, it is about the most unfriendly place to be in America as an African American. And so I wanted to not just say, hey, look, I care about this. I wanted to show day one, you know, it starts now. And specifically Moody Park, because I also wanted to show that in the midst of 53206, here's a park where a little over a year ago we finished a big reinvestment, the county did in that park, and we didn't just come in and say, here's what we're going to build. We came in and we asked the community, what do you want to see here? We talked to the neighbors, we talked to the businesses, the nonprofits, and we asked them, you know, what's important? What would you like to see here? And, you know, it's interesting, you do that in a neighborhood, you get a lot of different opinions. Not everybody always agrees, but what you see there now, you've got, you know, a youth service group, you've got a school, you've got health care, you've got all sorts of sporting facilities and, you know, water features, a community room where people have meetings. But what you see there is a reflection of what the community asked for. And because of that, there's a whole lot of buy-in in the community. They value what's there. And as I said when we had the opening, look, this is your park. This isn't, our park. This is your park. And we've committed to investing in parks. We have them all over the county, but we've been focusing for the last 3 years on parks specifically in the city. It's where the highest density population is, but where the impact is the biggest. And the statistic that stuck out to me recently that I thought this is something interesting, when recently the crime statistics, gun homicides came out, 5 through 206 has something like 250 per 100,000. I mean, it's just staggering, with an exception, and that exception is Moody Park and a block around it. They went down the last 3 years. And the reason I wanted to talk about that is not to say that Moody Park per se changes everything, but let's never forget, when we decide to work together, yeah, we can make a difference.
Yeah.
The other thing I was really excited about is recently, another great political development, the City Common Council has a new president, Ashanti Hamilton.
Right, he was just here.
Ashanti is great. I was proud to be endorsed by Ashanti, but we've been talking for the last 6 months about how the county's Office of African American Affairs can work with the city's office. But his election wasn't just about him. He, the Common Council president, appoints the chairs of all the committees there. And so now you have Mullally Coggs chairing finance, you have Russell Stamper chairing community and economic development. I mean, these are great people who, one thing that we all have in common, and this is what we're excited about, we're all going to be focusing on 53206 and being real, making a real commitment, real resources, real reallocation. And I was honored to have him introduce me at my inauguration. But yeah, that will be a #1 priority for me for the next 4 years.
Well, I have to tell you, I think it's a breath of fresh air, because someone that sits here and talks about the issues every week, and you just wonder at some point, there's a lot of rhetoric, but you want to see something put into action, and you want to see results. You want to see those stats change. So I really am happy to hear that that's where you are with really trying to fix some of these numbers that are obviously disproportionate. Former Milwaukee County Supervisor and now Alderman Khalif Rainey, he was also here on the same show with Ashanti Hamilton, and he talked about how he proposed the Office on African American Affairs, which was approved unanimously by the county board. So I'm interested in knowing what's the status and what's the plan on moving forward.
Sure. Right, I'm still getting used to saying Alderman.
I know, right? And so I might have to get
former
used to
Supervisor Rainey absolutely was the author of the resolution to create this office, and I think it's fantastic that he did that. And I think the value of him now being at the city, being familiar with what we're doing at the county, is going to help us work together a lot more. So we're not duplicating effort, we're leveraging what we're able to bring to the table. The city has a very different set of tools than the county does. The county focuses a lot, all counties do, on social services. The city, they've obviously their MPD, so crime prevention, their permitting, zoning development. We do everything from the back of the criminal justice system, the DAs, the public defenders, what happens after people are arrested, to alternative sentencing programs. But we deal with the aging population, disability, mental illness. And when we work together, because we're often talking about the same people, the city and the county, we're able to more effectively make a difference. But Supervisor Rainey, I know, is just as focused and excited about this as I am. And I think we have more tools and more opportunity to partner, the city and the county, on this issue than we've ever had before. So I'm just very excited about it.
I think that's awesome. So you still trying to figure out the location? Is that the question?
Yeah, there was some, so when the office was created, we, many, many months ago, looked around the country at different cities, counties, states that have created similar offices, of African American Affairs, to try and see, okay, how are people approaching it? Who's been effective? What works better? What doesn't? And we've reached out to folks in those offices and said, okay, what works? What would you do differently? But one thing that's pretty universal is this office needs to be located close to the highest level of decision making. My preference certainly is it's as close to the county executive, me or whoever is in this office, as possible, because in that office, the highest office, whether there's a city and the mayor, a county and the county exec, when you're in that office, you see decisions that are made on all 41 of our business lines. And I want this office to have visibility and be able to have an impact on all of them. You know, I worry about sort of parking it in some, you know, remote department. I just feel like it'll get lost, and I just think it's important that it's front and center, that it has the opportunity to have an impact and say on all the decisions we make. The other decision point is the board needs to vote to approve the funding for it. We have, you know, I mean, we've been working on our plan, and we have a ton of data and a ton of ideas and a ton of programming, and I just can't wait to be hiring people who, the idea of a staff who have no other priority but this. This isn't a back burner, it's front burner. They wake up in the morning, they go to sleep at night thinking, all right, who's doing what to impact and improve the quality of life for African Americans, and what can we do better? How can we do more of it? Who else can we partner? One of the most exciting things to me about this is, and I wasn't even expecting this, but when I spoke the night I was elected, my you know, thank yous, and I talked a bit about this being my highest priority, I got an email the next day from Vicki Martin, who's the president of MATC. And I've worked with Dr. Martin before. I think they do amazing work over there. And she said, you know, you talked about everybody needing to be on board, and you talked about the importance of this issue, African American full participation, full equality. How do we make Milwaukee from the bottom of the list to the place where the most friendly for African Americans? And she said, you talked about the academic committee. Well, we're part of the academic community, we're in. I want to do what I can to help. And then I talked to Mike Lovell, who's the president of Marquette University, and Mike said, we're in. John Raymond, who's the president of Medical College, he said, we're in. And here's the thing, I think sometimes in Milwaukee we can be really cynical about just sort of accepting the inevitability of a problem. We just kind of throw up our hands, or like you say, we do an op-ed or we have a conference or something, but then nothing really happens. But when we actually as a community all decide, hey, this matters, we can do anything we want. We have the pieces here and the tools, and I'm very excited to push forward.
All right, well, before we go to break, I do want to ask you quickly, high unemployment is obviously an issue, and last June, you proposed a new transit service between the region's two largest job centers. How's that looking?
Well, pretty good. The bus rapid transit would connect essentially downtown to the regional medical complex. So if folks are familiar with, you know, driving through the new Zoo interchange where you've got Children's Hospital, the Medical College, Freighter, there's 15,000 employees there, and all of those organizations are growing, and they're having a hard time hiring. They want more people to work, and what has been an issue for them is getting housing and people who can live nearby is sort of tricky. So the idea of a dedicated route that's just about from that complex to downtown, which would be the idea, that's express. Every day we're talking about, you know, 10 minutes, every 10 minutes. I mean, so frequent and fast and accessible and cheap is something they're excited about. And we also are working with MATC and some other educational institutions downtown to help specifically train employees for jobs at the regional medical complex. So this means more jobs for folks downtown who need them, more employees for folks out at the regional medical complex, and because we've got bus rapid transit, less cars parked all over the place. And
I like what you're doing. I like the sound of all of this. So if you would stick around, we'll continue to talk the issues. And when we return to Our Issues Milwaukee, we'll do just that, continue our conversation with Milwaukee County Executive Chris Abele. We'll find out more about the Opportunity Schools and Partnership Program and a whole lot more right after this.